Hi, Dr. H here again with family-centered parenting. And today I want to talk about what does a supportive parent look like? Well, that sounds easy. Every parent wants to be supportive of their children. That's a given. But the question is, we need to ask ourselves, what are my parenting goals and what does support look like? Because if we don't ask those questions first, we're not going to come to the right answer. You know, I was reminded while I was writing my book, Family-Centered Parenting, I saw a minivan in front of me, and on the bumper sticker it said, "I have no life, my daughter plays AAU basketball." Wow, that really got me to thinking even more. Now here's a parent who wants to support their apparently very successful athletic child, but at what price? They no longer have a life. That was probably a little bit of an exaggeration, but those of us who've come into and contact with parents who are involved with kids with traveling teams and tournaments and all those kinds of sporting events that are beyond the normal recreational will certainly relate to what a tremendous sacrifice it is for parents. And what is their goal? Well, maybe it's to, in their minds, they're willing to do that because they think that's the best way to be supportive. Now, I don't want to take you away from that and tell you those parents aren't doing the right thing. It is an individual decision, but I want to make sure that if you go down that road as a parent, you are asking yourself the question, am I truly supporting my child? At to what expense? And how much of my own life am I willing to give up and sacrifice in the name of support? So, things have changed. Social expectations for what support looks like have changed drastically. I mean, there was a time where providing adequate shelter, food, clothes, that was enough. That was supporting a child, to make sure that they had the basic necessities of life, and that was taken care of. And those parents of those particular generations, often parents of immigrant parents rather, of children who are first generation born here or come over, they're so geared to survival that making sure that kids have shelter, food, and clothing, that they're really that supportive. Well, times have obviously changed. And today we have societal expectations of what we need to do with our kids. And let's face it, there are dangers of what I'm going to call oversupport and also dangers of undersupport. So let me focus on oversupport. And what do I mean by that? I've talked earlier in an earlier video about helicoptering parents. And these are parents who, in their zeal to be supportive to their children, get just hyper involved. They call all the shots. Everything is organized. Every problem has to be discussed in terms of their involvement of solving problems for their children. There is really very little leeway for a child to act totally independently. What are the advantages of helicoptering parent? Well, kids stay safe. The parents know what's going on at all times. But I think most folks would agree that there are some dangers too. And the biggest danger is that our children do not learn resilience. Resilience is something that is learned through experience. It's the ability to bounce back. And if children are overly helicoptered, if the parents are overly involved, then are the children being able to capably meet small challenges, overcome them, feel good about them, and build that inner quality to bounce back from adversity? And there's some hints out there that helicoptering parents might be taking a toll on some of our young people. For example, I know that most colleges now, that counseling departments are totally overloaded. Many more students are complaining of depression and anxiety. And I think one factor, I'm not going to say it's the whole ball of wax, but one factor certainly is that these young people are on their own for the first time. And when they hit a challenge or an adversity in being away from home, they don't have the tools to handle it, and leads them to potential anxiety and depression. I'll give you one example that I've experienced. Um, in one of my jobs, one of my staff members came to me and said she needed to leave early from work today. And we had a good relationship. And I said, well, what's going on? Why do you need to leave early today? And she said, well, her daughter, who was a sophomore in college, living in a dorm in a college within commuter distance from where we worked and lived, had called and said that she and her two other roommates were having some problems and disputes. All three girls called their mothers and asked their mothers to come down to the apartment to help them resolve the problem among themselves. Frankly, I was taken aback, maybe, could I say horrified, because it just blew my mind that three 19-year-old women in college could not resolve an interpersonal problem in their apartment without calling upon their parents. To me, this was a prime example of helicoptering. The other thing that contributes to our children not having sufficient resilience out there is organized sports, frankly. I know was brought up as a city kid, and we played in the schoolyard and did not have parental supervision or organization. And what did that mean? It meant that when there was a dispute, when there was an argument about a foul ball or a strikeout or something of that, we would have to resolve it ourselves. Otherwise, the game would be over. And that's not what we wanted. We wanted to play. We wanted to have fun. So we learned how to resolve disputes, how to come up with an answer. We also learned to include everybody. Yeah, maybe the poorest athlete got picked last, but most of the time everybody got picked and went about and did their business. But in today's world, especially in the suburban world, all of the recreational supports are adult supervised. When there's a problem, when there's a dispute, the parent, the coach, the referee, whoever steps in to resolve it, and the young people on their own are not involved and do not learn those necessary social skills of how to do that. Another example, when I was an elementary school principal, when our kids went out for recess, which was different from gym time, this was considered free time, they often didn't know how to set up a game to play by themselves. They were so used to having their playtime organized that when they were on their own, they didn't know how to be taught how to play by themselves. And that's what I'm talking about. And that leads to that helicoptering. Now, can we undersupport our kids? Of course. And I know there's neglect. I'm not talking about neglect. It's clear that it goes on. There are some parents who are very ill-equipped to be parents. There are situations, economic hardships, etc., which leads to childhood neglect. That's not support, and we know that. But there's also what I would call conscious neglect, and the better word for it is free-range parenting. I mentioned that before in an earlier video about free-range parenting, which basically is a philosophy that says, you know what, I want my child to figure out who they are on their own, to solve life's problems on their own, to go their own way, to have all that freedom and do that. And these parents feel it's important to just let their child be the total decision makers, be out there in the world and navigate. There are positives to that? Well, to some extent. The kids, if they're lucky and are safe, then they will probably build some resilience and take care of themselves. But again, there are a lot of risks. And we also know for child welfare that they need more than that. Support means more than letting a child do their own thing when they feel like it. So I'm going to talk about what I'll consider mid-ground being supportive. And what do all our kids need? One, they need consistency. Consistency in parenting style, consistency in discipline approach. Kids feel safer, and we want our kids to feel safe. And that's what's part of being a supportive parent, is to have our children feel safe. So we need to be consistent in how we do that. If two parents or two caregivers aren't on the same page about parenting style, then you know what? They need to work at it to get on the same page. We want consistency. The other thing kids thrive with is structure. Kids feel safe when there's structure. They want to know what's going on, what their day is like, what after school is like, what time to go to bed, what time they're supposed to get up in the morning. Kids need structure. It helps them feel safe. So being a supportive parent means that we have to create sufficient structure for our children's lives, and that's our responsibility as parents. Also, we have to use positive reinforcement when things are going well. And to be a good reinforcer, one thing, a word that we use in the literature, is be salient, meaning that the reinforcement is real for that child, it feels real, and is done as close to the act as possible. If we tell our children, you're the smartest child I've ever seen, well, that sounds wonderful, but come on, that's over the top. Kids will dismiss that. That doesn't sound sincere. So it will not work. So we want our praise to be directed. We want it to be meaningful and salient. And saying just, you did a good job, and that's become a habit. I hear that all the time. Good job, Johnny. Good job, Mary. Good job, Yolanda. Good job, Keith. I would rather hear what you did as a good job. Reinforce the skills that I'm glad you worked so hard at that project. It's really good that you studied so hard. It did pay off on your test grade. The fact that you really organized your room really nicely and got your things in order, that was really terrific. So in other words, when we give that kind of reinforcement, be specific. Reinforce what it was that in your mind was a good job. The children will benefit from you saying that they've met their goals, and that in your reinforcement attainment of goals. The next thing that's so important in being supportive is how we communicate with our children. And our children need to be understood before we have to seek to understand them before being understood ourselves. Make sure we're good, active listeners. When we're active listening, we're empowering our children. They will thrive on that. They will know that they're important, they're being heard. It fills their sense of control and power, and they're less likely to need to act out. So good supportive parent will always be a good listening parent. And when you hear something that your child tells you that maybe is a little over the top, validate it first. That's an important communication skill. Yeah, okay, Susie, I know you look like you're really upset because your best friend said something negative to you on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. So before you minimize it or tell them what to do about it, acknowledge that what they're experiencing is real for them. And when you do that again, you're validating them, you're giving them a sense of importance, and they're much more likely to open up and share with you problem solving because they've been understood and validated. Be honest about your own needs. And that's really where that dilemma about being a supportive parent comes in. Do you really have to be at every soccer practice for your 9 or 10-year-old? You know, who are they playing soccer for? Are they playing it to please their parents? Or are they playing it for enjoyment and to build their skills? And I think we've gotten, and I've seen too many times, I've been part of it with my own kids, the shouting at games, at Little League and soccer games, even with young children in practice. I've seen a mom or a dad running up and down the sidelines, kick the ball, Johnny, kick it here, Mary here, block it here, run faster. My God, that's not supportive. That's over the top. Why are you defining your own life by how your child, your 9-year-old, is kicking a soccer ball? Maybe you're better off, you want to get them to practice, of course. That's part of what they're doing. They're on a team. You want to make sure they're there. They have the proper equipment. Absolutely. Do you have to stick around for the entire practice? Why? Aren't you better off maybe taking care of yourself, spending a little time on your own, reading, relaxing, paying attention to some other things that you need to do for you? Because when you are relaxed, when you feel fulfilled, you're going to be a better parent to begin with. So take stock of your own needs when you're making decisions about how much involvement is really necessary. Explain to your kids, I'm very supportive of your work in soccer, but being supportive, let me tell you why, it doesn't mean I have to be at every practice to show you I'm supportive, or even stay for every game. I mean, I'll go further. The problem, of course, is that if you're in a community where a lot of parents are there, your child doesn't see that parent there, might feel, oh God, where's my mom or dad? I feel unsupported. And that's why it's so important that we communicate with our children effectively about what it means. So it's not just social pressure that causes you to be there, because then you might even resent it even more. I'm only here because if I'm not here, my kid's going to give me a hard time, then I'm not supporting them. But if you've explained to them, and that's why, in my book, Family-Centered Parenting, I'll put a plug in for it right now, Family-Centered Parenting, your guide to growing great families, which could be found on our website, familycenteredparenting.com, or on Amazon. We talk a lot about how important it is for a parent to understand their own needs, how to communicate effectively, how to hold family meetings so that you can explain to them and negotiate what a supportive parent is like. So for now, I'm going to sign off and look forward to seeing you again. Take care. Goodbye from Dr. H.